Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, dear listeners, hello and welcome back to the podcast. This is the first solo episode of 2026. How exciting! And Happy New Year! But before we get into the episode that I want to record for today, before I get into the meat and potatoes of this solo episode, if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, I am currently taking on online clients, and I would love to help you invest into yourself, your health, and your fitness this year. All you need to do is click on the link in the show notes, the link that says sign up for one-on-one coaching with me, so you can read more about my services and pricing, and you can fill out my application form. Then I'll get back to you in 72 hours, assuming I'm not going on annual leave. But if you are signed up for my newsletter, then you will hear about that in due time. And now that my pitch is over, let's get straight into the episode. If you're listening to this, it's because the title spoke to you in some way. I'm a fellow recovering perfectionist and all or nothing thinker myself, and I coach a lot of people who struggle with similar tendencies. Probably because I make so much content about this topic and I attract this type of person. In any case, because of this, I've experienced and seen countless ways in which these ways of thinking can hold you back from achieving your goals, which is ironic since anyone striving for perfection, myself included, is doing so in the belief that they will get better results, not worse. Poetic justice or something, I guess. Anyway, in this episode, I'm going to share some hard to swallow pills that can get you out of this vicious cycle of perfectionism and all or nothing thinking. You won't like them, or they wouldn't be hard to swallow, would they? Or at least I didn't. Maybe you're just a more mature person than I was when I started working on these tendencies of mine several years ago. In any case, if you are really committed to better results, then you will embrace these hard to swallow pills because what you're doing right now is not working. That is why you're listening to this podcast. Because if it had been working, you would have achieved your goals already and you would not be one of my loyal listeners, for which I am truly grateful, by the way. And just so you know, dear listener, I originally wrote this as a newsletter, and it was one of those times when I was so inspired that the newsletter practically wrote itself. And I can already tell you now, dear listener, before I even start, that I'm going to get passionate in this episode. And I'm probably going to come across as snarky sometimes. And I do not mean to offend you, but this is something that I have been struggling with and that I am getting better at now. But for the majority of my life, this was a challenge ever since I was a little kid. So, in a way, I am talking to my younger self here. And that is where this impassionate tone is going to come from. So please bear that in mind as you listen and do not take offense to my tone or the way that I come across. So, in no particular order, let's start with the first hard to swallow pill. Done is better than perfect. And you can apply this to anything. The workout that you've been skipping because you know that you won't have time to do every single exercise, or the diet that you've not started yet because you're not ready, in quotation marks. This is an excellent mantra to live by if you are a recovering perfectionist and or all or nothing thinker, but I cannot take credit for it. My client Talon found it on Tumblr, and it helped them lose a whopping 40 plus pounds together in a year. Imagine what kind of power you could unlock with it. The second hard to swallow pill is that just because an extreme approach is working now, it does not mean that it's going to be effective in the long run. I'll give you a practical example. I've just started working with a client who's already lost 13 pounds in 8 weeks on their own prior to signing up for coaching, which is absolutely incredible, and they deserve credit for their hard work and perseverance. And by the way, they are a returning client, so I can think of at least one person who taught them how to diet successfully. The problem is, in their first check in a few weeks ago, they said, and I'm quoting, "I think that proves how much I can knuckle down when I want to." And when reporting on their hunger levels, they proceeded to say, "I want to eat my own arm." Riddle me this, dear listener. How long do you think that you are going to last in a deficit if you are already calling it knuckling down and dying people's arms like a psycho after 8 weeks of dieting? Yeah, the answer is not long. Just because you're knuckling down now, it doesn't mean that you'll be able to do that forever, or that you'll still be hammering away at your goals in 4 weeks, 4 months, or 4 years' time. And isn't that the whole point? Isn't the whole point of you listening to my podcast, where you know that I specialize in a lifestyle change, to actually change your lifestyle for good? You need to pace yourself. And this can mean going through extreme phases in which you're going to want to eat an arm, yours or otherwise. And that's fine if it's meant to be a short term strategy, followed by a more moderate deficit. It's not quite as fine if it's your whole strategy, especially if your answer to the question, "what happens when you burn out and stuff your face with cake for a day or two?" is, "I guess I'll knuckle down harder." No, you won't. You'll fuck up, which will demotivate you. You'll burn out and take a break from fitness for who knows how long. You feel like you're back at square one, which then makes you even more demotivated and keeps you from trying again. And by the time you finally get back to it, it really is going to feel like you're starting all over again. Is it really worth it? Give that some thoughts. The third hard to swallow pill is that you do not need to track your calories perfectly. If you're telling yourself any of this, "I ate out, so I couldn't track and gave up for the day," or "I didn't have a scale and couldn't weigh those cookies I had at work, so I just stopped tracking at that point," or any iteration of this same concept, then you're losing entire days of useful data because you could not track every single little morsel to the gram. Said with love, from a recovering perfectionist to another, if it sounds ridiculous when I put it this way, it's because it is. Hard to swallow pill number 4. Stop lying to yourself by not tracking your bad days. And bad, I need to make it very clear, is said in quotation marks. First of all, having pizza or ice cream doesn't make you a murderer. You are going to have to try a lot harder if you want to claim to have had a bad day. Second of all, the days you don't like still matter. They still affect your progress, and you can still use them. For example, by choosing to lower your calories a bit for a couple of days to even out the weekly average. Or by choosing not to do that because you're working on your relationship with food, and part of this includes not compensating for accidental high calorie days. Either way, it's all valuable data. Right now, you are plateaued, or you keep starting and stopping because you are only tracking the 5 days you are on plan, and you are ignoring the 2 days where you're scoffing 5,000 calories in one sitting. Track it all. You won't believe it now, but the more you do it, the more desensitized you become to the food that you choose. It all becomes just what it is: neutral information. At this point, I do want to bring up a small caveat. Sometimes tracking is not appropriate in this situation. For example, if you have binge eating disorder, or even if it may be appropriate, tracking your binge days alone is not enough to help if you have a full blown eating disorder. I know that most of you listeners are way too smart not to know this already, but eating disorders are too sensitive a topic for me not to make this disclaimer. Anyway, moving on, the fifth hard to swallow pill is that you need to stop giving up when your meal plan fails. Picture this: You've made the best meal plan ever, all in caps TM. You've tracked every calorie and every macro, and it's all going really well until you have an impromptu dinner out on Wednesday night. At which point you tell yourself, well, shit, there goes my meal plan, and I can't even track this curry accurately. I've done all this work for nothing. So you throw a hissy fit, and then you need a few days to recover from your frustration before you can work up the will to get back on your nutrition plan. And this happens every other week. Come on! You could be making double the progress if you only learned to pivot when your first plan goes to shit. Which is a masterful segue, if I can say so myself, into the sixth hard to swallow pill, which is that the problem is not the spanner thrown in your perfectly crafted plan, it's that you don't know how to deal with it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing plans. I love plans. If I could plan my own death, I probably would. Not in a suicidal sort of way, but more like in a can I pick a day and time that suits my schedule sort of way. Man, I'm on a roll today, obviously. Murders, cannibalism, and death all in the same episode so far. Isn't that impressive? Anyway, I've also learned, and I'm still learning, through painstaking practice, how to pivot in the moment when something doesn't go to plan. Not if, but when. If you can't do that, if you can't pivot, you won't get very far, because life is almost always going to throw you curveballs. A plan that you had to change at the last minute can still beget excellent results. A plan that started great and that fell apart and you were not able to pivot from will not beget any results. The seventh hard to swallow pill is that it's not the one day you eat cake that's holding you back. It's the week that you keep eating cake afterwards because you already ruined it, in quotation marks. Right now, you are stuck because you decide to start over Monday, as people say, every Thursday just because of a piece of cake. Stop blaming the cake. The cake is innocent. We like cake around here. Well, I like cake, and I'm the host, so obviously mine is the only opinion that matters. But stupid jokes aside, stop blaming yourself for wanting some cake. It's not a matter of willpower. You do not need to learn to resist the cake better. It's a matter of learning to give yourself permission to eat anything without guilt. It's the only way that you stop overeating and you will start getting better at portion control because you're not always telling yourself that you can't have the goddamn cake. Ironically, when we give ourselves unconditional permission to eat whatever we want, all of a sudden, whatever it is that we want loses its appeal after a few times where you've given into the urge to eat a lot of it because you've spent years telling yourself that you could not. The eighth hard to swallow pill is that a perfect diet that you do not enjoy is a diet that you will not stick to long enough to get results and keep them. Eating out of Tupperware containers, never eating out, and never going on holiday so you do not miss workouts is the single best way to make sure that you never miss the mark. Except most people will not enjoy it and thus will not stick with it. Maybe you will white knuckle this lifestyle until the end of a cut and get to see your abs. But those abs are not going to stay around for long if you burn out because this approach is ultimately too restrictive for you. And if you're not most people and you genuinely enjoy this way of life, good for you. But if you are most people, like me, and you cannot imagine yourself doing this forever, good fucking luck trying to. The ninth hard to swallow pill is that a training program with fewer days that you almost never miss is better than one with more days that you keep skipping. And I already know what you're thinking if you're an OG listener. But volume as a dose response relationship with hypertrophy, Nick. Sure, doing more volume, if you can achieve progressive overload with it and recover well from it, makes you grow more when you actually do it. If you're stubbornly trying to run a 5-day program but you only ever get 3 sessions, you're actually signing up for worse results than if you just followed a 3-day program. For example, If you are supposed to follow a push-pull legs upper-lower split over 5 days, but you only ever get around to doing the push-pull legs part, you're only training each muscle once per week. On the other hand, if your program was designed to include 3 days, such as full body repeated 3 times, or upper, lower, and full body, now you're not missing out on anything, and you're training each muscle twice or even 3 times per week. And to wrap up this podcast, here is the pièce de résistance, the final hard-to-swallow pill of the episode. Resilient is more effective than perfect. Striving for perfection is nowhere near as effective as planning to be perfect while accepting that you will not be, and still getting on with it instead of giving up. Mark my word, I am not blaming you for planning to be perfect. I do the same thing. I am certainly planning to hit all of my targets as best as I possibly can. But I am also learning to accept that as best as I possibly can does not mean that I will be 100% on point. And that is keeping me far more consistent than constantly trying and failing to be perfect and feeling so frustrated with myself because I can't be. Importantly, you do not need to be, because what yields results is the average of your behaviors, and you do not need a 100% average to get the results you want. Otherwise, no one would walk around with the physique that they want and in great shape and great health. Believe me. For most people, an average of 70 to 90% is plenty, but you are not going to achieve that when your average is the result of 20% perfection and 80% I'll start over Monday because this week was crap. And that is a wrap for today's podcast. Thank you for listening. I hope this episode gives you some food for thought and contributes to changing your way of thinking so that you can finally get the results that you deserve for your hard work in 2026. Happy New Year again, and let's strive to make it awesome. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.